You can see my name's Leslie Moulton. Amongst other things, I'm the convener of the Resourcing Ministry Committee, and encouraging people to engage as congregation members more fully in the life of their congregations is part of the remit of the committee. And so one of the important things about this evening is actually to create a forum in which we can share experience. But perhaps we can move round and introduce ourselves. Peter, you might start with that.
I'm the mission officer for Lothian and Borders. Have the privilege of doing that. And if you haven't seen me in your locality yet, I'll hopefully be there soon, or please invite me.
Yeah. Alan? Oh, you need to unmute Alan.
Right. I'm Alan Lundmark. I'm from Bonnyrigg in Midlothian, although I'm a member of Eddleston Parish Church, which is linked with Peebles-Old and Stobo and Drumelia. And I started the journey with Robin and Francis on the worship courses. I've done 2 of those courses, and we should be starting the level 3 in January. I'm sharing it with a colleague from Eddleston Parish Church, and we have started to lead worship, and we are doing it together. We decided that, to start with anyway, that we will share services when we are at Eddleston.
Thank you. Murray and Patsy?
There we go.
Whoops. I'm Patsy Campbell, and been in the Carlops, Newlands and West Linton group of supplementary preachers since we started, which is about 5 years ago, I think, wasn't it?
Longer than that.
Longer than that, yeah. Well, it seems a long time.
Murray Campbell, Patsy's husband. So we're both in Carlops Church and part of the West Tweeddale linkage, which is 5 different congregations. So we desperately need worship leaders to keep it all going, and that works very well.
Okay, thank you. Robin and Francis?
Thank you, Leslie. We are Robin Hill and
Francis Cunningham. And
we are from Gladsmuir with Longniddry. We'll be speaking a fair bit in the next few minutes, so we'll just leave it at that for just now, and you'll get a sense of who we are in due course.
Okay, Kevin.
Excuse me, Kevin Scott from St Andrews, West Linton. Yeah, originally part of the linkage with Carlops and Newlands, now West Tweeddale with those 3, and Broughton, Skirling and Tweedsmuir. I've been doing this for 5 years now, originally with the Word and Worship training in the Melrose and Peebles Presbytery. Enjoy it, it's good fun.
Thank you. Ishbel.
Oh. Sorry, no. Can you hear me now? Yeah, sorry. Sorry, this laptop has a problem with often delaying picking it up. So sorry if I start speaking, it doesn't work. I'm in Eyemouth linked with Coldingham. And yeah, for quite a number of years, a group of us have led worship because at one point it was a 3-way linkage with St Abbs, and then St Abbs united with Coldingham, and in fact the church at St Abbs closed several years ago. So yes, been involved with that, done some training through the Old Duns Presbytery, and then Andy Haddo, the minister, has also given a group of us further training.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Morton, I live in Dalkeith, but I'm a lay pastor at Lasreed, Rosewell, Cockpen and Carrington. I'm also the Presbytery Treasurer.
Okay, thank you.
I did the lay pastors course and the worship leaders course.
Okay, thank you. MC?
Hi everyone, my name is MC Engelbrecht. I'm from Cape Town, South Africa, doing my familiarization here in St Andrews High in Musselburgh with Leslie, and yeah, just being present to observe and to learn a bit more.
Thank you. Fiona?
My name's Fiona Burnett. I'm part of Upper Tweeddale, which is now also West Tweeddale. I was trying to work out how long I've been doing it. I think for 30 plus years, which sounds dreadful. But for the last 15 years, I've been doing it with Upper Tweeddale.
Okay. And Callum?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Callum Greenhow, live in West Linton, so head along to St Andrews. Background, just very quickly, I have done worship leadership before, but that was in another denomination. So now part of, obviously, the Church of Scotland, and keen just to sort of understand how things are done sort of within the Church of Scotland, and how I can be of help in service.
Okay, thank you. I was, as I was setting out to think about what we wanted to achieve from this evening, here were my three headings. One was to encourage, and I think we're aware that there are lots of folk across the presbytery who are involved in worship leadership in various ways and in being lay pastors. And one of the things that we wanted to do is build the beginning of a network of fellowship and sharing experiences, sharing encouragement. And I hope that that's one of the things that we'll achieve from this evening. The second one was recruitment. Hearing what you've said around the room, Callum, the spotlight's on you for recruitment, because everyone is involved in some way, but perhaps we might also be asking people who are already lay worship leader or local worship leaders whether lay pastor might be for them. And the last one is support, and thinking about ourselves as a new presbytery. How can we provide a level of support for folk who are in this area of work, which is so vital for our churches? And that's, I think, one of the things that I hope will come out of our conversation, which is about encouragement and about support. And I hope that that will be what we feel like we're able to do this evening. Peter, if you could put up my slides, if you could screen share. I think we just need to look at slide 1 for, oh, there we are. If you're able just to put up the first slide. I did try to choose pictures of places of worship who might be represented this evening, so I don't want you to miss slide 1, because many years ago I remember going to Drumelia Church as a mission partner to take the worship there. But really it's to move on to slide 2, and very quickly to pick up, sometimes when you're thinking about how do you enter into a conversation through scripture, then the really important thing, or the important thing, is to go to the obvious place. And I chose as the headline for tonight's webinar 1 Corinthians 12:27. All of you are Christ's body, and each one is a part of it. And I think that the first thing that we've been clear about as a presbytery is we hear around our screens how people are responding to what seem like very practical needs in communities, about having multiple buildings and the need to maintain worship, and knowing that in order to do that, you have to expand the number of people who are able to lead worship. The Presbytery of Lothian and Borders has been clear that we want to support people doing that, but even more, we want people to understand and to live the reality that that kind of participation of the whole body of Christ in the leading of worship isn't a response to an emergency. It is normal and natural. It's about growth. It's about people finding their voice in faith. And that if your church has a worship team, if your church has a lay pastor, it's not to help out. It is actually integral to the very nature of Christian faith itself that that worship belongs to the whole people of God and for the whole people of God. And before we move into what we're doing as a presbytery and hear more about that, I wanted just to share an example from my former church where we had a worship group. And the worship group, I don't ever remember ever conducting a service on its own. The worship group met to support the planning of services and to the generation of ideas that services might contain, and to saying who in the congregation is equipped to enable that to happen. A different kind of model of a worship group, but a very vital one. And actually the backbone of that worship group were a fairly recently retired couple, both of them art teachers, who had an amazing way of visualizing how what we were presenting in worship could be represented through arts, and how they could involve the whole congregation in the creation of artwork. And there was a real sense of excitement when it was known that something was going to be presented by the worship group visually in art. I saw today that people were being invited. One of the things that we did was we created a large tapestry, no, it wasn't tapestry, a large hanging in the shape of a cross with silk. And over the years, we invite people to come and write the name of their loved ones that they're remembering, and we affix that to this cross. And when the breeze catches it, because the things are hanging loose, it all shimmers. And there are now several hundred names on that, some of them more than once, and it becomes a living part and an ongoing part of the worship. That's the kind of thing that we were generating through the worship team. So one of the things that I want to say is we shouldn't simply see worship teams, worship groups and congregations as providing services, but actually as enabling the whole congregation to engage in worship in a deeper and in a more meaningful way than is possible when worship leadership is all concentrated on the one person. If you move on to the next slide, Peter, we can ask the key questions for this evening. How do the gifts of members in your church enrich your worship and ministry in the local area? How can Presbytery support you in training and resourcing those who wish to develop their ministry? And what might the next steps be for you as an individual and as a congregation? And we'll have time to talk about that in much greater detail in just a few minutes. Before then, though, I want to do two things. We know that Robin will only be with us for the earlier part of the meeting. But one of the things that is important is that we don't expect people to do these tasks without also taking the responsibility of providing good quality training that is both about letting people have the building blocks, but also more importantly, the confidence to go and do these tasks. And I know that in the previous presbyteries, this was done in different ways. What Lothian Presbytery offered along with Edinburgh Presbytery is our ongoing recommendation to the presbytery for that. And I asked Robin not so much to talk about the content of those courses, which many of you have already done or are in the course of doing, but the experience of giving them and how those courses have been experienced for those who take part. So over to you, Robin.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Thank you. It will in fact be Francis and myself who will leave at 7:45 because we're both members of the business committee. However, we've got plenty of time to get into the nitty-gritty of what goes on in terms of the courses that have been offered in the old Lothian Presbytery, some of which have now come over into Lothian and Borders. So we go back to about 2015, and one initial course that was set up for members and elders in rural parts of the presbytery, charges which, when vacant, could potentially take a long time to fill. So presbytery thought it would be a good idea to have something that would allow people to get a degree of training and a degree of experience for that time when a minister was to leave and they might be without a minister of their own for a long time. Over and above that, we got into training for bereavement and funerals. And then as time wore on, we realized that the kind of issues which were affecting rural charges might also affect any given charge. And so we made it a set of courses for across the whole of the Presbytery of Lothian. And then when Bill Wishart, who'd been our probationer here, when he went to a charge in Edinburgh, he was able to encourage the Presbytery of Edinburgh to get involved as well. With lockdown, we suddenly realized that there was this amazing thing, love it or hate it, called Zoom. And so ever since then, we've been doing our courses online using exactly this kind of technology. What I would say is that the three courses which are current at the moment are our introductory one, which is very, very introductory. So introductory is it that we say to ministers, if you think that your people are beyond level 1, as it were, then put them in at level 2. Level 2 is the church seasons, going all the way through from Advent, right round the calendar, and back to November, December by the end of it. And the third one currently is on a comparative study of the 4 Gospels, and also throwing in the second part of Luke, which is the Acts of the Apostles. So by doing this, we are able to encourage people to test things out. And we always say at the beginning that the participants are there at the behest of the minister who has previously nominated them. It's not something someone can volunteer for. It takes a minister to say, yes, I'm prepared to oversee what's going on here and to make sure that there's supervision, there's encouragement, there's the ability to take things forward in a practical way, Sunday by Sunday or in different settings at parish level. So that's the kind of basic undertakings a minister will make when putting a name forward. The undertaking that we give as a team of ministers and readers and elders who are organizing the courses, what we say is that with the first course, we want to bring the candidates by the end of the 5 weeks, we want to bring them to the starting line. In other words, they are not going to be the real deal by the end of 5 weeks, and we know that, but we're giving them the very, very basics so that they can then go back to the minister and say, well, this is what we've done. What should we do next? And the minister might say, well, join me in an all-age talk, or why don't you map out a prayer, and I can look at that, and if you're happy to do it, then you can do that in church on Sunday morning. And then what we hope is that people will develop over time. If I were to use 3 words, as Leslie did at the beginning, I would be cluing us into 3 E's, 3-letter E's. One would be educating, or if you prefer, training or informing, whatever you prefer. One would be encouraging, because what we're doing is we're saying to people, this is something, this may be an untapped, a latent gift you have already. God may have provided you with this and you don't realize it. So we really want to encourage you to give it a go. You're going to be doing it, all the practical stuff you'll be doing in your own congregation. You'll be surrounded by friends. They'll be cheering for you. So know that there's encouragement out there and be encouraged to go and do it. And the third thing, which ties in very closely with that, is just enthusiasm and making sure that we, as leaders of the course, if people come back on, say, week 3 or week 4, and they say, well, actually, yeah, I did a reading in church, and I've never done that before, then we'll be there to be an enthusiastic voice saying, well, that's brilliant. That's something you hadn't done previously. And now you're on that first rung of the ladder. Keep going, climb the ladder, and see where it leads. Where it has led, and we get this both from Bill Wishart and from myself, we get feedback from ministers and from participants, especially those who are coming back for level 2 or for level 3. And what we're hearing is that the participation of our people who are trained in worship leading is appreciated by the congregations and encouraged by the ministers. And very often teams of people who have come for training then bed down within the life of the congregation, to the extent that one minister in Edinburgh said to Bill that with his team having gone through the 3 levels, he is now perfectly happy to go off on holiday and entrust the leading of worship to his worship team. Now, he will always have a supervisory role in what that congregation is doing, but it's good to know that ministers are trusting in the people they have put forward for training, and that is something which is bearing fruit in very big ways. What I'm going to do now is just turn to Leslie and say, would it make sense for me to introduce Frances and say what her story was, and then she can tell us a wee bit about the lay pastor side of things. Oh, do you want to unmute yourself?
What I was going to do, following naturally on from that, was introduce Frances through the video.
Yeah,
that Peter, I think, has ready to play. So because the next thing is, we've had quite a large stress on local worship leaders, but one of the things that's come out in the setting up of Lothian and Borders Presbytery is also the introduction of lay pastors, which again is something that was introduced through Lothian Presbytery. We discussed it a lot before we introduced it. It came to Lothian and Borders Presbytery and was accepted in a single discussion. And so there's a bit of bringing up to speed the rest of the presbytery to get everyone on board. People are asking the question, what's the difference? And we made a video thanks to Fiona, which we hope helps explain the difference and shares some of the enthusiasm that people have who have taken up both those roles. If you're ready to play that, Peter, that would be great.
Give you some company. There you go. We're not getting sound, Leslie or Peter.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether I could speak and say that, but yes, I'm not getting sound either.
Sorry about that. I will come out and try again.
Nope, still no sound.
Still no sound.
No.
It had sound when I did a dummy run earlier this evening. So,
it always does.
oh dear.
How many Sunday mornings in St Andrews High have been like this? And the folk who do it are so faithful in trying to get it set up, and it always breaks down at the last minute.
St Andrews in West Linton. I've been doing the worship leading for about 2 years now.
I'm Frances Cunningham and I'm a lay pastor with Longniddry, linked with Glasmuir Church.
Right, I'm Elizabeth Morton and I am a lay pastor at the joint congregations of Lasweed, Rosewell and Cockpen Carrington, and I work with Lorna Suter, the minister there.
Okay, I'm Isabel Hunter. I'm session clerk in Upper Tweeddale Parish, which is part of the linking of West Tweeddale, and I have been a worship leader for probably about 15 years now.
So for me, a worship leader is all about the service. So it's about preparing for a service, but the main task is just to lead a service normally on a Sunday. So that would be everything. That would be from choosing the hymns, working out the prayers, which you may get some help with, or you may not, depending on how the church operates, and presenting the reflection.
When in our cases we always had 4 different services every Sunday, and so the minister clearly couldn't do all of them, so it needed someone else to fill in. Now we've got 6 churches in our charge, so it's even more important. But it's not just that. You're there if the minister's not well or the minister's on holiday. And I think the important thing about leading worship, you're not just a fill-in. You're not just there to fill in because the minister's not there. You are leading worship. You may not have the colour and everything, but it's a responsibility to do that.
Varied. And I've tried, Lorna has encouraged me to try virtually everything. I take part in the worship most weeks, either the prayers or doing a reflection. When she's on holiday, I, with the other worship leaders in the congregation, take the services. I help her with Scripture Union in a primary school. I have taken worship for her when she's been on holiday at the local care home. I have been involved in funeral visits and been encouraged to write the tribute and the prayers. They've not been used, but just to get a feel of how to do it. Basically anything that she thought would assist me to grow and develop.
I take part in the worship service every Sunday. I take part in the service at Longniddry and again in the service in Glasmuir. Some Sundays I write a prayer, some Sundays it would be an all-age talk, and on the occasional Sunday I would write a sermon. I also take part in Bible studies and worship leadership courses, being one of the leaders for that. I have been taking funerals with Robin as my minister, just taking as much part of the service that I can do. I have actually done one funeral on my own, which I enjoy it very much, being part of it all. There's not a bit that Robin doesn't ask me to try and do.
The training that we did with Neil, Leslie and Elizabeth was good because they're totally different styles. And that actually was quite reassuring that there isn't one way to do something in church, that there are many different ways and different ways of approaching it. No, I enjoyed those weeks that we all met together, and it was very close-knit, and we did all get together.
I think the course was very well thought through, and it was obviously aimed at somebody of my level that didn't have a degree in theology or whatever. Very well thought through. It was very easy to understand, and the trainers were excellent and were there to help us at all times. I was pleasantly surprised that I really enjoyed it. Well, I've got ongoing training, which I think everybody needs. I am very glad I've got a very enthusiastic and supportive minister, and I think you have to have that to embark on this training.
For myself, I felt I needed to go a bit deeper for my confidence and to know that what I was doing. So I actually did a Christian Studies course, which was long distance from Aberdeen University, and I found that very helpful for sort of the theology and pastoral sort of theology, all that kind of thing. That was very good. And then we did our own course within the Melrose and People's Presbytery, which also included a sort of practical assessment. And I think that's actually quite useful because not everybody is comfortable and maybe not everybody is gifted to actually lead worship, even if they want to. And I do intend to keep doing my CPD, my continual professional development is my plan.
The training was excellent. It was really good. It was very focused. It was very practical. It was very focused on what you need to do. So it went through what the typical format of the service should be, sets of prayers, 2 sets of prayers, and what those sets of prayers are there to do. Help with things like hymn selection to the extent of knowing that you don't pick 2 hymns that are a bit too similar. Or a mistake I made once was to pick 2 hymns that actually had the same tune. I think the problem with the course is there's not much theology in it. It's all about how the service goes. So sometimes you feel you're relying on your own knowledge. Now, most of us have been through many sermons, many services, probably know a lot more about the Bible than perhaps we think we do. I'm very lucky because we have a worship leaders group as well who talk about their experiences, talk about the material that they use. And that is incredibly useful as well. What materials are available, what resources are available. Something like that's always great.
Well, when I went into the option, we got the option of maybe ending up going down one route or the other, and I definitely did not want to do worship. That wasn't my thing. I wanted to expand the pastoral side of it. I love caring for people, organising social things, outreach, everything like that. You know, I've just been to visit a care home and found it so rewarding. You know, all that side of the pastoral care, and I like when people feel that they can share their concerns, their worries with me. And I thought that was the way I would go down, because I was somebody who would not go on the platform at communion, did not want anything to do with reading, just not up for it at all. And now I find myself doing everything. That was where I would see the difference in a worship leader. I wouldn't be doing pastoral stuff, but it was so important to me that I can marry the two. And I think being a lay pastor does give you that extra recognition, for want of a better word, that people feel they can speak to me because I'm a lay pastor, not just a worship. Not that that's in any way a reflection on a worship leader, because there'll be very excellent worship leaders.
Well, the worship leaders tend to do in the church only, for one, basically. They do parts of the service in church. But I do other things with the minister. I meet with her. We discuss how things have gone. I now help with Messy Church as well. And on one occasion she was on holiday and she asked if I would do the worship part of the Messy Church. And I did that. Now the worship leaders, although they're there maybe sometimes at the Messy Church, they don't actually do the worship. But I have done all these other bits and pieces. The worship leaders tend only to take part when the minister is on holiday. And well, there's 3 of us and we do it together, and they're from both congregations.
Okay, I mean, I must admit I don't know very much about lay pastors, so what I'm conscious of is a worship leader, it's really just about the service for that 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour every week. Or however often the services are held. Whereas I imagine someone who's a lay pastor probably works with individuals or groups, helping them think about their faith issues, maybe helping them with practical issues as well. So I see them as being very different.
not an expert on this, but my understanding is that a lay pastor is a broader, involves a broader training, a broader development of talents than being a worship leader. I think my understanding is a lay pastor could end up as a worship leader, but then there's also other roles where they can help in ministry, maybe pastorally or, I don't know, some other ways.
The first bit is the community bit. The thing that struck me the other day is I was talking to somebody and they said, we don't have a service every week now because we haven't got a minister who can run it because they're covering so many churches. And that for me felt very sad. So one of the main things is the broader issue of it will mean that people can come to church on a Sunday, which I always think is important. So I just encourage people to go up and do it, because we've all got gifts, and anything you do, even if you just strengthen the faith of one person in the congregation, you've done a great job.
It's a very satisfying role, I think. It's quite hard work. You do have to spend quite a few hours putting your service together every week, but it's challenging and it's interesting. I think it deepens your own faith just to have to get up close with all these different texts from the lectionary that you're not quite sure what's going to come at you. And choosing the hymns and writing the prayers is good. And sometimes the sermon comes quite easily, and sometimes it definitely doesn't. And, you know, we can say when we get up into the pulpit, you're never on your own. The Holy Spirit's with you, but he does expect you to do your homework. And you get the real satisfaction if somebody tells you that they've got something out of the service that you did. That's a really rewarding thing and makes it all worthwhile.
I think spiritually it has developed me. I have grown in not just faith, but in the desire to keep reading and looking at things. It's very fulfilling. I find a real depth to it all. And I come away really, not fired up, that's the wrong word, but really, it's really quite a difficult thing to say. Strengthened. A real sense of achievement, that I've contributed something worthwhile. And if you get the chance, and if that's what you're looking for to do, I would encourage anybody to try it. And just to give it a go.
Go for it. If I can do it, who had no confidence whatsoever about standing up, speaking to people, can do it Sunday by Sunday and actually get thrown in at the deep end some Sundays and not bat an eyelid, then anybody can do it. And it's the most worthwhile, rewarding, lovely. I keep saying I just love it, and I do. So I can't say any more than that to somebody.
There we are. Thank you very much. And I know that at this point, Robin and Francis are just about to go, but I hope that has been helpful for all of us. I'm not sure if Francis and Elizabeth have seen that already, or if that's the first time.
Well, what I'll do, Leslie, I will head through and we'll do the bits of the agenda that don't necessarily involve Francis, but Francis will stay, and if there's anything you want to chat about, that'll be fine.
Okay, thank you. Now, thanks, Robin.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
And what I propose, because we are a smaller group than we perhaps anticipated, is that it's better if we just stay in the one room and chat about things between ourselves. And for the next 15 minutes, as they say in the best presbytery meetings, questions are always in order. So I had put on the slides time for questions, but also, and if you could pop up the screen with the questions on it, Peter, just have a look at what I wanted us to have time to talk about between ourselves. I think it's almost the last the questions for the breakout rooms. It's a wee bit further down. There we are. So the first one is sharing your experiences of enriching a congregation, then thinking about what might be the next step for your local congregation to enable more people to be involved. And the last question, and this is an important question for us in the Resourcing Ministry Committee, is what support would you like from Presbytery to enable this? And we've got time. So let's spend just a wee while, because I think there are encouraging stories around the table, spend just a wee while talking about the first of those, and we can bring that screen down, I think, and then we'll move on through the questions later on. But encouragements that you have that you'd like to share. I'm now looking for Alan. Has Alan gone? Then want to ask if there's...
Alan is there, Leslie.
All right, I don't see him on my screen. Where are you, Alan?
He's muted. Unmute yourself, Alan.
He's muted and off the... There we are, Alan. Can you hear us now? I don't... If Alan comes back in, I know that Alan was speaking quite a lot about the kind of encouragement that he had from taking part in this kind of work. And I wonder if there are other folk who would like to share something of what's encouraging in their situation.
Can I just say, from Carlop's area, it was very encouraging when we lost our minister that we had lots of people who took up the invitation to do readings and prayers, and now a lot of them already participate. So what seemed to be a disastrous situation has in fact prepared us very much for having even bigger grouping of churches, and that people are now used to volunteering to take responsibility for part of our services. That helps the person taking the service quite a lot.
And Patsy, just as you're speaking, it strikes me, because I've never been in that kind of multi-benefice rural setting, but actually another benefit is about the movement of people between congregations, that you're not so held in. Is that right?
Yes, indeed.
It's. I think we've all found it very, delightful in a way, although quite demanding too. That we've got now, congregations 20, even 30 miles apart. In Carlops, we're at one end of it. Next Sunday, I'm going to do the service in Tweedsmuir, which is way up at the other end. And that's great, because I've now got lots of friends there. We've done it a few times, and they come and do things for us, and so on. So it's all good.
And anything else that you would say was a kind of encouragement from your local situation?
What I found was a personal experience, and that was, if you're taking the service, you really do try to understand the text. I'm like giving lectures in university. So if you don't really understand things properly until you've got to explain it to other people, you're more or less starting to try and understand the thing all over again if you're trying to express something meaningful about it. So that's been my biggest reward.
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you, Patsy. Isabel.
I think as you were saying, that the movement of people around the different churches is really important. I think that's great that you get to know each other, and I think Stephen was saying, I think we do feel good that it means that there's a service in every community every Sunday. And we've always held that from when we were just 4 churches together to now being six, that's absolutely key. And I think it's something that we would love to spread throughout the presbytery, that you can have church every Sunday. It's absolutely possible with somebody there rather than a live stream's probably fine, but it's nice to have a living body up there too.
And just if I can just add, I was actually there's one or two of us from our group who actually also occasionally take services at Edelston. So I was down at Edelston this passing Sunday, and I was chatting to Alan at the end of the service. And one of the things that it's not an encouragement as such, but it's a benefit, I would say, is that, and Alan and I were chatting about this, and I've chatted with others, is the fact that we benefit from all these different voices with different life experiences, different faith experiences, different styles of delivery of the reflections. So you always have to kind of tune in, and actually that variety is a wonder. It's a really great thing. But at the core of it is our minister who leads us and who's our spiritual, so he's there, but actually around him, there's all this different, these different ways of looking at what God presents to them. So yeah, that was all.
And Alan, I went to you first. Thank you, Kevin. Went to you first because right at the start, before anybody else was on, you were saying, you were talking about the experience of being, if you like, on the first steps of this journey, and not so much what you were doing, but how that made you feel. And we thought that actually that was quite a good thing for other folk to hear about the experience of starting out. Some of the folk here, that's quite a long way in the background. Alan.
Yes, sorry about not being able to come in earlier. I was having problems with sound on my laptop, on my iPad. Anyway, yes, we started, I suppose I should explain for people who weren't involved in the conversation earlier. I was sharing worship with another member of the congregation, Christine Donnelly. We both did the worship training seminars, level 1, level 2, and we were asked to do our first service after we had completed the level 1 training. And so we decided that since we were both novices at it, that we would share the services and support each other in the preparation and in the service itself. And I think I was saying to someone earlier on, when working to prepare services, it's a very long time since I've done anything that has been quite so demanding, but also so rewarding. And rewarding in two senses. One is just developing my understanding of the text that I'm perhaps going to give a reflection on or preach on, a sermon on. But more importantly, the reaction from the congregation, which is just, it was almost overwhelming the first time we did it. Just the love that just was emanating and the support from the congregation. When the service finished, Christy and I stepped down and we went to walk towards the door, the convention of speaking to people as they leave. We couldn't actually get people to leave the church. The congregation just stayed in the church, stood up, came into small groups, were talking to us and supporting us and talking to each other. And there was this kind of sense that this was the congregation taking its own service. And that was I just found that enormously rewarding. The satisfaction out of that is what I suppose, it just maybe want to do more of it, just carry on and go through the training courses and start to develop the way we do it and the way we work together. And it's enormous. That's the biggest thing I get out of this is just this enormous feeling of support that I get from the congregation. And it's the same when taking part in these the worship training, with Robin and Francis and what have you. When you're involved in the conversations in it and you listen to other people's experiences, the support you can draw from that, they are dealing with the different approaches that people had to it is enormously supportive. The conversation that I had last Sunday with Kevin, it was all about shared experiences and talking about the fact that we do it in different ways. That is enormously supportive and encouraging. You realize that you're doing something which is completely new, but others doing it the same way, and they're always prepared to help you, talk to you about it, and that is extremely rewarding. So the support you get from the formal training courses, the support you get from other worship leaders, the support you get from the congregation is really it's so motivating, and it's so rewarding that it makes all of the effort in trying to put a service together worthwhile. You just think, that's it, I'm ready to do it again because of that kind of reaction you get.
Thank you very much, Alan. We've got a few minutes left. There may be one or two more folk who want to contribute something. Maybe also to ask, because we have Elizabeth and Francis as lay pastors, and maybe some of you are wondering, is my next step expanding worship leadership into becoming a lay pastor? So there's time for questions or another comment. Really interesting things that Alan has said that I want to pick up on a little bit as well. But anything that anybody wants to say or ask at this point? Yes, Francis.
I'm delighted to hear that Alan has enjoyed the leadership courses. I'm one of the takers of the course, and I tried to put over how I felt at the start of this. I didn't think for a minute I could do any of the things I've done. So I'm hoping that my encouragement in showing them my journey and the approach I take, I'm not deeply theological at all, but I'm learning more as I go along. And every service that I do has a pastoral slant on it, but there's always the theological bit, the meaning's there, and there is always that bit in it. So I think that helped people, that you don't straight away have to know everything about the Bible. You just have to be confident in what you're putting over. And I'm so pleased that Alan's progressing the way he is, because yeah, it sounded like me right at the start. And yeah, but again, if you've got a supportive minister, a supportive congregation, then that's half the battle. It's so rewarding. And I just get, it's not a buzz. I mean, at a funeral, I feel that I've helped somebody along a grieving journey. And that is such a privilege to be part of it. It's all, I mean, I'm just very enthusiastic, sorry, but I'm delighted that Alan's enjoying what he's doing.
Thank you very much. I'm aware that we're just on 8 o'clock, and I'm going to ask your indulgence for a couple of minutes. I'm also aware that geographically we've heard from everywhere. We might not have heard from every person except from iMouth, and I wondered, Ishbel, if you'd want something that you wanted to contribute, a reflection or a thought.
All I would say is it's very interesting listening to other people's experiences. I think in iMouth and Coldingham, we have a mixture of ways. I love the idea of going around different churches. It hasn't worked with us. Andy, our minister, has tried to get the worship teams in both congregations to swap with each other, but they're very different congregations, and there's not been a lot of enthusiasm for it, let's put it that way. There's a group of 4 of us And when we're leading worship, we tend to plan it together. In addition to that, there's also other people who will be, well, a lot of other people involved in doing the readings. We've had that established for, I don't know, 20, 30 years. I mean, it's a long-standing thing. There are others in the congregation who will take part in the prayers, even when, the minister's there, when Andy's there. But when he's not there, there's two things that can happen. One is the group of us will essentially lead the worship that he's planned, and we get the sermon live streamed from Coldingham to Eyemouth. Assuming the technology works, we've got to be prepared to do a reflection on the text if the technology, like it didn't last Sunday, work. And then about 3 or 4 times a year, the worship group plans the service completely itself. But what we've tended to do is choose a theme and then invite the congregation to choose hymns that they would really like. Now, we end up with far more hymns than we can possibly use, even though we tend to make it focus as a sort of songs of praise type service, and we will have about 8 hymns. But what we then do is we meet together, we look at the list, we pray about it, and actually from that, often we may have had a reading or, some readings in mind to start with, and then we'll work from there and, divide up prayers, readings, different bits of the service between the 4 of us. So yeah, we have these different sort of formats for doing it.
Thank you. I want to give one final reflection and one final question. And actually, I thought that the reflection came out of what Alan said, but it also comes out of what you said, Ishmael, and the wider conversation. And that is, I think there's something really important theologically about the work that you're all doing. And I say this as a minister. A minister comes in from outside, almost on loan to a congregation. And then when the time comes that that minister is no longer a minister, they go away. And there's a life of a congregation that's ongoing and has its own richness and its own dynamic. And Alan said something that was very important. Why is this important? It's not to make sure that when the minister's away, you can have a service. It's important because the community grows the theology. And when everyone is involved in the planning and the leading of worship, then the theology is growing out of the whole community. And we break a cycle that actually isn't healthy of something being imported. And so I think that what you are doing is more than just helping out. It's absolutely vital to help us understand what the church truly is. And the church truly is the church when people do theology together. And that doesn't mean going to new college. It means living the gospel where they are. And that's really, really important. The last question is, and it may be that the way to deal with this question is to send me an email. But the last question is, what do you look for from Presbytery to give you support in the work that you're doing? What would you like Presbytery to do for you? And if you don't have immediate answers, or if you're looking at 4 minutes past 8 saying we promised an hour, and yes, I'm guilty for letting that happen, then my email address is amilton, A for Alexander Milton, at churchofscotland.org.uk. But there may be somebody who wants to I think the big question that I have is it helpful to try to develop things like this where we have a network of people coming together who have the experience of being worship leaders, to share experiences, to share ideas, and to perhaps provide resources for one another? Would that be a helpful thing to do occasionally?
I think, from my perspective, I'd like to go and just reflect on what support we might benefit from Presbytery, and I'll certainly come back to you with an email. But this idea that we worship leaders, that we meet together and share our experiences and share our ideas, I think is so important. And hopefully we can do it not by doing it virtually, but actually physically meet, and share experiences. And I think the support that can be drawn from that is just, it's immeasurable. I think I know several of the people involved tonight, or who've been involved in the video you showed earlier, and just to get together with them in person and share experiences and learn a little bit more about different ways of doing things, I think is invaluable.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. And perhaps I could give one very quick minute to Fiona to say something about something that we're doing, and that is putting worship resources up on the website as a general resource for Presbytery, including yourselves as worship leaders. Fiona.
Unmute myself. Yeah, so the Presbytery website is there. Certainly the mission committee is trying to put things up. Basically anything that you want or you think that you can use, we can stick up and try and find and put up for people. Also the Acorn, which is run by Susan Brown, is a great website. Valuable resources there if you're actually leading worship and need some inspiration. She's doing a fantastic job.
And they have Advent and potentially...
We have Advent things coming up, Advent Bible studies, and also Advent stuff for leading worship that Robin Hill has very kindly put up. And hopefully we'll have stuff as well for Lent in the new year. If you know of anybody who is interested in actually helping out in doing the Lent stuff, then let me know, because we are looking for somebody to write something. We're a big presbytery, so there must be some people out there who would like to take up the challenge of writing some Lent material.
Thank you. Peter, I'm going to hand over to you just to be our host as we close. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation tonight. It is good to be together. It's good to swap stories across the presbytery as we think about our own calling on the season we're in our lives, and what God's and the communities that we're part of, and our participation in that. And God's always calling us forward. So do have conversations with Leslie. I'm sure there's suggestions as regards. We'd love as a presbytery to be supporting you and offering. I mean, you've heard what Fiona said, but just as we're learning as we go as this presbytery, just what resources are appropriate and how we can best further your situation. So shall we finish maybe by saying the grace together? You can either mute yourself or unmute yourself, whatever you want to do, but just seems with us as worship leaders and lay pastors together, it just seems a good thing to bless each other in finishing. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ,
the love of God,
and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Thank you very much, Peter. And Leslie.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.